Dr. Alistair speaks at a scientific conference, saying that he and his team have found a solution to the problem of generating electricity. He proposes splitting water to produce hydrogen, which burns really well. At this time, student Eddie packs the device he invented and goes to the laboratory. On the streets of Chicago, work on the invention of Alistair is underway. Another experiment begins, which ends in failure. In the evening, Eddie continues the experiment in his personal laboratory, and quite by chance, notices a positive reaction that occurs when his drilling machine is turned on. The guy understands that these sound frequencies were not enough for success. The next day, he repeats the experiment in a large laboratory and gets an even better result. Scientists congratulate each other and throw a party to celebrate their success. Alistair and Shannon argue over whether to make the discovery public. Alistair wants to share it, but Shannon believes that the United States should use innovation for themselves. After the party, project physicist Dr. Lily discovers that her car will not start. Eddie notices that the girl has had too much alcohol and takes her home on the bus. At this time, Alistair and his assistant Chen are preparing to post their discovery on the internet to share their success with the whole world. Chen notices a group of strange men entering the laboratory. Meanwhile, Eddie takes Lily to Alistair's house. It turns out that the girl is renting a room from him. Eddie puts her to bed and then returns to get his motorcycle and encounters a van along the way. He approaches the laboratory and hears an alarm. Inside, Eddie finds Dr. Alistair with a plastic bag over his head. The system is in a pre-emergency state. The guy tries to help, but it is too late. Chen is nowhere to be seen. But there is a bomb next to the tank. Eddie realizes that the explosion will happen any minute and quickly rides away on his motorcycle. The detonator sets off a powerful hydrogen explosion that destroys the laboratory and surrounding streets. Eddie is saved by a miracle. He takes cover in a small trench and dials Shannon's number. The guy reporting the disaster and the death of Alistair. Shannon goes out onto the balcony and sees the light from the explosion. In the morning, rescuers are clearing away the rubble and do not understand what could have caused such destruction. The FBI begins an investigation. Lily reports the disappearance of Alistair and Chen, and Eddie talks about the events of the evening, but the officers are very skeptical about this information. Numerous interrogations begin. Shannon states that technology for the production of cheap and clean energy is of interest to all of humanity. He does not understand who needed to destroy the laboratory. Eddie is asked about the reason for his return. Lily remembers Chen as a wonderful person and a good leader, but searches of his home reveal that he left in a hurry, so Chen becomes a suspect. Eddie, Shannon and Lily return from the interrogation to Alistair's house and meet an FBI team conducting a search there. Shannon is outraged because there is a lot of scientific and highly secret documentation here. Lily receives a message from China on her fax in which Chen asks her to come for a meeting. She understands that someone wants to set her up. Eddie takes Lily to his home, while the FBI arrives at the research center where Shannon works. Agent Fords is very surprised that he is patronizing Eddie. The guy was expelled from the university for blowing up the laboratory. Shannon points out that the damage was minimal, but the result of his experience was colossal. Then the agents talk about Lily being invited to China and being suspected of espionage. Meanwhile, Lily and Eddie see that the guy's house is cordoned off by the police. The FBI conducts a search and finds a transmitter and a wad of money. Lily and Eddie meet Shannon in the parking lot. He asks questions about the evidence found, but the couple insists that they were framed. And although the scientist demands to surrender to the police, they refuse because they want to find out what is happening. Then Shannon gives them money and advises them to hide, while he contacts a lawyer. Eddie remembers their mutual friend Maggie and suggests going to her. At this time, FBI agents are making inquiries about Shannon and studying his work in US projects. Questions arise about the scientist's identity. At this time, Eddie and Lily go to a cafe while waiting for the train. Suddenly, news about the search for criminals is broadcast on TV, and their photos those are shown. The couple decides to take different routes, but Eddie has already been identified, and while Lily gets into the taxi, the hunt for the guy begins. The police surround and drive him onto a drawbridge. The FBI joins the chase. Eddie gets to the very top of the bridge and climbs to the inside. The agents ask the bridge operator to begin lowering it. Eddie gets to the lifting mechanism and jams it. The bridge freezes and does not lower completely. The guy hides behind its supports and then gets to a nearby truck. Lily waits by the train, where Eddie comes running. The couple reaches an observatory owned by Eddie's old friend Maggie. Meanwhile, the Senate is holding a hearing on the tragedy. Shannon confidently states that the sacrifices are terrible, but if it helps strengthen the United States, then they are justified. At this time, Lily and Eddie come to the conclusion that whoever pulled off this whole operation knew almost everything about them. If Eddie had not returned to the laboratory, then no one would have known what really happened, and they would have considered it an accident. Meanwhile, the FBI tracks Shannon's trip to a research center in Virginia, where even the FBI is not allowed. Shannon arrives through underground tunnels at the company head office and goes to the director Lyman. The scientist is furious because it was he who caused all these tragedies. However, he did not intend to kill the scientist and make Eddie the target of the hunt. At this moment, Shannon is called to the phone. He hears Eddie's voice, who reports that Lily's fax did not come from China, but from the US consul. Shannon tries to silence the conversation, but the FBI traces the call. The police are rushing to the telephone. Eddie escapes and makes it to the observatory. There, Lily finds information that the consul is lobbying for the interests of energy companies. The police are already at the building. Eddie and Lily run out onto the roof, where a police officer takes them at gunpoint. At this moment, a helicopter appears over the building, from which shots are fired at the officer. Eddie takes the dead cop's weapon, and the couple runs to the lake, where the rescue team is landing. The couple rides across the frozen surface to the other side. They manage to reach the shore and hide in the bushes. The couple heads towards the shore and falls through the ice. Eddie notices a house nearby and takes the girl there. They warm up and don't understand why the policeman in the helicopter shot at his partner and not at them. Meanwhile, FBI agents come to Shannon and report that his friends have killed a police officer. Also, questions have arisen about unpaid taxes of his company. Lily falls asleep and Eddie goes to the garage, where he finds a car. At this time, Shannon comes to Lyman. He is unhappy with the murder of the policeman, because now Eddie is in even greater danger. Eddie is working on the car and notices the light from a flashlight in the house. The guy manages to neutralize two men, in the pocket of one of whom he finds a card with the logo of Lyman's research center. The couple runs away again. Sometime later, Shannon receives a message, from which he finds out that Eddie will be waiting for him at the museum. Shannon reveals his involvement in Lyman's company and invites the guy to work for him. At this point, Lyman's men capture Lily, and Eddie barely manages to escape. Lily is brought to the research center, where she meets Alistair's entire team. Shannon wants her to continue working in a new location. Meanwhile, Eddie manages to get into an open police car. He checks the license plate of the kidnapper's van and tracks it to a secret research facility. He gets to the room located under the laboratory and learns about the unsuccessful experience of the new team. Lily notices him, but doesn't show it. At night, Eddie sneaks into the laboratory and begins to fix the system. The next morning, one of the scientists discovers a working reactor. Everyone celebrates success. Shannon downloads work data and secretly transfers it to his assistant. He goes to the boardroom and meets Eddie there. The guy sends a letter to the FBI, agreeing to surrender to them in the research center building. Shannon explains that everything happens because of the economic crisis in the United States, which would inevitably happen if humanity received free electricity. Eddie demands his and Lily release in exchange for the reactor to work. Shannon agrees, but Lyman enters the room and refuses, because he thinks that the process is already working. Eddie starts up the reactor and sends evidence of his innocence, as well as plant drawings, to the offices of international scientists and the FBI. Lyman shoots Chan, then he locks Eddie and Lily in the laboratory so that they die in the inevitable explosion. Shannon has to come to terms and run away with Lyman. The couple remain in a locked laboratory while an FBI helicopter flies towards the base. Eddie and Lily manage to open the hatch to the lower room. Meanwhile, Lyman is in the elevator, taunting Shannon, but shots are fired and the director falls on the floor. The scientist escapes from the bunker and disables the containment system. This allows Eddie and Lily to enter the inner corridors. They reach the lifting mechanism moments before a blast rips through the complex. On the surface, they are met by FBI agents who are now completely convinced of their innocence. At this time, Shannon leaves through a secret exit. He gets into the limousine and dictates a note in which he informs the CIA director that the Lyman Center has ceased to exist.